And welcome everyone to this session on the creative industries, the Commonwealth and entrepreneurs. Time to join the dots. We have now 45 minutes in the good company of Arif Zaman, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Business Women's Network, which is a good partner for us that we organized a past event as well. We have Dr. Nnamdi Madichie, I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, Research Fellow at the Bloomsbury Institute in London. And we have Nneka Okekearu, Deputy Director of the Enterprise Development Center at the Pan-Atlantic University, which is our partner for Nigeria. Nigeria is really a great partner for us, and especially the Enterprise Development Center have developed a lot of great startups. So has Nicolette Chinomona from Sparks Ideas Group. She's in Botswana, and she is our national partner in Botswana, but also helping out in South Africa. I don't know how you manage that, Nicolette, but you can tell us more about that. And with me here is my dear colleague, Gary, who's actually been organizing all this together with Arif, and who will run the session together with me and Arif, right?
Yeah. I can help a little bit with the questions, and I'm taking a look at the chat. Welcome, everyone.
Great.
So we're ready to go?
Great. Okay.
Arif, the word is yours.
Let's rock and roll, to use a bit of an old 60s piece. Okay. Or the show hit the road, Jack, as they say. Okay. So here we are. The sun is shining, Rasmus, where you are, and I'm not sure what it's like in Botswana or Nigeria. London is kind of mediocre, which is what you expect with London weather. But in any case, we're on our way. Nnamdi's with us as well. So what we're going to be doing in this session is we're going to be stirring the pot. What do I mean by stirring the pot? We're going to be stirring the creative pot, because we want the Commonwealth to get with the program, by which we mean we want to get people thinking about the Commonwealth, not just as a picture of a woman standing with, I think it's more or less 53 men, maybe 52 men, the 54 heads of government, they're mainly all men, when they all stand with the Queen every 2 years at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. We don't want them just to think about that. We don't even want them to think about the biggest sporting event in the world after the Olympics, which is the Commonwealth Games, but we want them to think about Bob Marley and the Beatles and Bollywood and Bowie, all the Bs, and all of those things, of course, are creative industries, and creative industries.
And Nollywood as well.
Nollywood, yeah, but I was trying to stick with the Bs, Rasmus. I was trying to think with the Bs. So I've got Bollywood, Bowie, Beatles, and Bob Marley.
Burna Boy.
There you go, and it keeps coming. So the point is, we've got this richness in the Commonwealth in terms of music, in terms of literature, creative industries, film, design, video gaming. I mean, it is extraordinarly rich, and not least because, and just the two facts to share with you at the outset, we have a very young population in the Commonwealth, 1 in 3 people on the planet, but 60% of our Commonwealth community of 54 countries is under the age of 30. And we also have evidence to show that if any 2 Commonwealth countries do business with each other, any kind of business, whether it's creative industries business or whether it's other kinds of business, there is a reduced cost of doing so by up to 20%, about 90 to 20%. Why? Because if you think about it, there's a common legal infrastructure across the Commonwealth countries, and Commonwealth governments have recognized that, which is the reason why there's a lot of impetus now to create stronger linkages. We're not talking about a free trade agreement, but what we are talking about is removing some of those barriers that are very common across our Commonwealth community to unleash the kind of entrepreneurship that our panel represents so well today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play you no more than a couple of minutes, I think 2 or 3 minutes, from one of the 25. We have a record number of women as high commissioners in London right now, about 20, I think 23, 24 of them. One of them is Mae Williams. Not only is she a high commissioner, but she's an accomplished pianist. So she's a musician as well, a very good musician.
And Arif, you might want to explain to the audience, which is not necessarily only a Commonwealth audience, what is a High Commissioner?
Very good question, Rasmus, and thanks for checking me on that. So basically the same as ambassadors. So we call them high commissioners in the Commonwealth. So if the ambassador to any two Commonwealth countries are referred to as high commissioner, so that's pretty much what they are. But envoy is probably the other way to describe it. So the ambassadors, the high commissioners, the same thing. And she is one of she represents her country as Antigua and Barbuda based in London. And she participated in Global Entrepreneurship Week in a panel that we held where we started this conversation about the creative industries. I just want to share screen, and I've queued this, Rasmus. Hopefully it'll work and you won't have any embarrassing emails or images come up on my screen, which will probably what will happen. But let me try and share screen and go to the right place. And I'll just play this for about 2 or 3 minutes, which will give a bit of context. I'll turn up the volume as well. Hopefully you'll be able to hear. Just hear what she's saying. And the question which I had put to her was, I said, look, we have all these Commonwealth meetings, but what about the creative industries? Yeah, don't we need to do something more with that? And why is it? The question I asked was, why is it that the Commonwealth never brings together ministers who do work on culture and the art? They meet on other topics, education and finance and trade. And this is what she had to say. So let me share screen now and let me play.
And we can't hear anything.
Oh, let me just, yeah, I think probably the reason of that is probably entirely my fault, because I probably didn't share when I said, let me pause share. If I think I need to share sound.
While you're getting,
yep, I've done that. Let me try that. Can you hear that? Can you hear that?
I think you need to run it first.
Yeah,
you need to actually press play.
Yeah. Let me just get it back to the right point. Here we go. Can you hear that? Yes?
No.
Good.
We don't hear anything.
Okay, let me just try one again.
Well, it's very odd that if you look at some of the wealthiest people on earth, or some of the most impactful things on human life, it is actually from and through the creative industries.
Can you hear that?
It was
okay. Let me just play it for another few seconds.
To make that case,
we'll give it one more try and then we'll move on.
Okay.
With the Abiso, that yes, tourism is about getting more airlift from British Airways and Virgin Atlantic and building a new 5-star hotel that's eco-friendly, but it's also about the quality of people's experience, about how they feel and how happy they are when they're with you. And what does that better than the arts? And I'll just say really quickly, in your earlier comment about bringing people together, waiting on Chugums or the Commonwealth Games, in smaller ways, this is happening. I think of Alison's work with us in Antigua. When she brings students from the Purcell, who are a constellation of students from across the Commonwealth and wider afield, we are bringing people together. And from different cultures, whether it's Sri Lanka or from parts of Europe or from other parts of the world who are at the school, we are coming together and making music and learning about each other. And it's a two-way street. We teach them about steel pan and calypso, and they teach us about what they do, and everyone symbiotically benefits from it. So that's just in some way.
Okay, so let me stop there. Let me stop. I've paused sharing screen, so let me just we'll get back into the rest of the discussion. I hope you caught some of what she was saying, but I'm not sure. Could you hear that, my panelists, while she was speaking? I'm not sure if you could hear. Nnamdi, could you hear what she was saying just then?
Yeah.
You. Okay, I mean, let me just
it was a bit muffled.
Okay,
yeah.
So let me just simply summarize very briefly. She was talking about, and you know this, but the power of experience, the fact that experience is so powerful in terms of the potential of bringing together communities across the Commonwealth, and the experience that the creative industry provides is unparalleled, and we need to be doing much more, not just in in facilitating the sharing of those experiences, but by building the ecosystem that could give rise to those experiences. So with that seg link, if you like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn first to Nicolette to say something about the work that she's been doing in Botswana, particularly in supporting startups in the creative space. Nicolette, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. This is a very interesting discussion to be having. I do have a passion for the creative industries because I myself am a creative. I like to dabble in making things. And fortunately for me, I do have skills in other areas that are also not considered creative. So that has allowed me to be a little bit more agile and flexible. But then for other entrepreneurs that are focused solely on being creative, on creating a piece of art or in the traditional creative spaces, sometimes they have a very difficult time transitioning into running a business, starting a business, and actually being more well-rounded. I think this is something that anyone who is a creative can identify with. We get so caught up in the making of the thing and the art of the thing that sometimes, when we do not then, make a point of trying to develop other areas that are not necessarily creative, then we struggle. So a big part of this has been, like Rasmus has said, being part of the Creative Business Network for the past 5 years as a person who is, running the competition here in Botswana. And it's been amazing because I think this is the only competition that actually focuses specifically on the creative industries. I find that a lot of entrepreneurship competitions tend to focus on more traditional aspects of business. And I also like the fact that, as the Creative Business Network has grown, it isn't just, a competition, it's also integrating elements of actually educating, creating more business resources for startups in the creative space. And this is something that is desperately needed. And oftentimes, especially, we're talking about being in the Commonwealth. So a lot of the times when people think about creative industries in countries that are part of the Commonwealth, they think of things like crafts, handmade things, cultural items. And to be honest, a lot of those items are not really considered prime items in terms of, starting a business, because a lot of people are like, oh, that's so touristy, yeah, we'll just get the little crafty thing when we go to this place that we can say, oh, we've been there, but there does need to be an emphasis in, allowing these businesses, supporting them to actually develop their products beyond just being, oh, that's nice for tourists, but actually, how do we then propel it into industries that are more than just focused on things like tourism?
Great. No, thank you very much, Nicolette, for that. Well, what I want to do is I want to come back to pick up on some of those points that you're highlighting about some of your experiences and challenges, and also look at some of the policy responses and what we can do internationally. But before I get to that, what I'm going to do is ask Dr. Nnamdi Madichie to come in next, because what Nnamdi is going to do is provide a bit of a broader landscape presentation, which will then, I think, link very well to Nneka and the work that you're doing in Nigeria as well on the ground. So Professor Nnamdi Madichie is Research Fellow at Bloomsbury Institute in London, where in the interests of transparency, I'm also a senior lecturer there, but Nnamdi's done a lot of work, particularly in the area of creative industries, and is currently writing a major book on this as well in Africa. So Nnamdi, do you want to share screen and show your presentation, or do you want me to bring it up entirely?
Arif, please do. Please bring it up. I don't know what's happening to my...
Let me just, yeah, I will share screen, and then let me just go to that now. And okay, so hopefully you can see that.
Right, okay, yeah, nice one. Right, thanks everyone. Nick's introduction was spot on, talking about crafts, because there is a categorization of creative industries to creative goods on the one hand and creative services, one being of higher value than the other. It's not just about picking up some wooden craft and that sells for maybe 20 pula. I believe you're in Botswana. I'm familiar with that environment. I've got friends out there. Yes, so Arif, the next slide actually puts in context the categorizations of creative industries taken from a very reputable source. So if you look at that, if you look at what's on the screen now, you can see the broad categories to the left. Heritage is one, you got the arts, you got media, and of course the functional creations. And that is where the youth actually, that's the space for the youth. And that's what I tend to consider high value. So now let's take them in turn. When you look at the heritage, and that's initially when the concept of creative industries came about, heritage was kind of dismissed as not being part of it, because you're looking at for profits as opposed to not for profits. So in terms of definitions, it must be able to make profits, generate profits. So you look at cultural sites, and you look at traditional cultural expressions, arts and crafts that Nicolette mentioned earlier. So when it comes to arts, you got visual arts and you got performing arts. Now that's something that's quite interesting, because you begin to see stuff like paintings, photography, antiques being part of visual arts, and of course performing arts. We talked about likes of Wiinstedt, Timu Savage, Burna Boy. Sorry, they all seem to be Nigerian. There's somebody called iPapi. iPapi is trending on Spotify, and don't forget the latest craze now, Master KG and Jerusalema. These are very interesting things that are powerful dynamics in the arts, broadly defined or categorized between visual and performing arts. As far as media is concerned, now that's something that's quite interesting as well, because you begin to see digital publishing. Now, is everything digital? And that's something that's one space where you begin to find that value added. And that's where the innovation is coming from. Then talk about audio visuals, talking about film, television, radio, and other sort of broadcasting. I'll return to that point, because there's so much going on. And I didn't really ask Arif what this presentation is pitched, or what region to pitch this presentation, because my love is for creative industries in Africa and the potential. But then again, I also want to put it within the context of the Commonwealth. So in other words, we're looking in terms of those partnerships and collaborative sort of arrangements between especially the United Kingdom and many other countries in Africa, notably South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. Those tend to be the power blocks when you talk about creative industries and their contribution to the GDP of those economies. And especially when there was a swap between the #1 economies, first and second economies in Africa, Nigeria and South Africa. They've been trading places. There was a rebased GDP. And of course, when they took into consideration the creative industries, Nigeria supposedly became one. But I know South Africa tends to have a more organized creative space compared to Nigeria. But I know many other people would disagree, but that's my observation and based on my research. Now to the functional creations, and that's where design comes in. You're looking at fashion. I love fashion. You know what the African Development Bank is doing in terms of fashionomics? So many seminars on that. Fashion is taking a different dimension across Africa. So you're looking at graphic design as well. Then talk about creative services such as architecture, R&D, and advertising. Digital advertising is also very powerful. Then new media, you're looking at video games, animation and games. That there's some, I think it's there are 3 friends, I think probably 2 from Nigeria and 1 from Uganda that harassed, well, I don't know if harassment is the right word to use, Disney. The language in mainstream media was they were going to kick Disney's ass. And guess what Disney did instead? He decided to partner with them before he gets his butt kicked. So that's something that's quite interesting in that space. And there are a couple of others in that regard. Arif, can I move on to the next slide?
Yeah, can I just say, Nnamdi, we've got about 10 minutes for you to finish this off. That's great. Right. But I know you've got about 20 slides to go. So over to you.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Okay, I'll probably just stop when I get to my book that's in the works. So this particular book here was published in 2019. And one of the key inspirations here with my colleagues, 2 of my colleagues at Bournemouth University here in the UK, we looked at digital entrepreneurship in Sub-Saharan Africa. Within that book that we edited, I had a chapter on Nollywood, Nigerian music industry, Nigerian movie industry, so to speak. And of course, it was based on, I did a research and kind of updated the research I did prior. I did that in 2010, I guess. But I began to appreciate how Nollywood seemed to have moved on. There are Nollywood movies on streaming on Netflix. Now, that's something quite interesting. And there's a book as well that's called Digital Kenya, which kind of, this book kind of picked up from. There is a chapter in this book that talks about animation and games. And especially Kenya seems to be leading in that space. Ghana is doing very well as well. Arif, next slide to my book, I think. Now, look at this. This was published in 2014. So you can begin to see when I started getting those initial triggers, but never really got involved in undertaking research on that. Creative industries in Africa, sleeping giants. That's unfortunately still seems, yeah, giant is a bit awake, but it's only got one eye open at the moment. Arif, next slide, please. So this is the book that is in the works. We've already sent out the first draft. It's going to be published by Emerald Publishing. And this book takes a holistic view. I'm writing this book. My co-author is Professor Robert Ebo-Insin, who is based at University of Ghana. And the whole idea behind this book was conceived when I visited Ghana in January 2020. After I did a presentation, postgraduate students on the creative industries in Africa, I got a series of questions from those students, and I sat down with Robert and I said, look, guy, we need to do something about this, you know? So what are we going to do about it? And he said, let's write a book. Let's make it an edited book. I said, no, I want the narrative to be seamless. So it's got to be you and I doing this book, not an edited book. And it didn't take long for me to realize the mistake. So much work had to go in here. And the more you write, every time you turn on the news, there's something new happening in the creative space in Africa. It's never ending. Now, just to sum up, Arif, I'll stop on this slide. Just to sum up, if you look at the key features of this book, now the key features here, it captures the implications of Brexit. And of course, behind that, you begin to see the re-engagement with Africa. Between the UK and Africa under the auspices of the Commonwealth. Now that's something that's quite interesting. There's one chapter that is dedicated to that. There is another chapter that is dedicated to the African Continental Free Trade Area. What can AFTA do? I've been attending numerous webinars and even one or two with Wamkele Mene, who is Secretary General of AFTA. And I've been asking, what's Africa doing about the creative industries? What are you talking about trade? How about the fluidity of innovation, streaming, etc., etc. And finally, just to wrap up, Twitter on my mind. Now, Twitter, there are two faces to Twitter in West Africa, especially. Nigeria banned Twitter, big issue. Twitter relocated and put the regional headquarters in Ghana, Anglophone West Africa. And I'll just stop there. Thanks, Arif.
Thank you very much. I know you did a lot of extra work. So what I'm going to do is, because I think it's good to let people, we can share the slides, of course, later. I'm just going to quickly go through, if it's okay, Dan. I'm not going to go through point by point, but just to show people slide by slide in 60 seconds, the work that you've been doing, heritage, what you've been talking about, really, visual arts, fashion, the music ecosystem, London-based Nigerian DJs. Hopefully we can come back to some of these things talking about streaming as well in the discussion. So for now, thanks very much. Let me pause share and let me go back to the panel. And Nick, I'm going to ask Nneka to come in next to talk to us a little bit about Nigeria and the work that she's been doing in Nigeria in the creative industries. And again, looking at some of the challenges and opportunities for the creative industries in Nigeria and your experience of working with
Arif, you could maybe unshare your screen.
We've
done that maybe.
I have done that already. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've already done
that. Good. Now
we
can see everyone. That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just saying in terms of Nneka, if I could ask you to pick up this point around your experience of working with the creative industries in Nigeria and also some of the challenges and opportunities there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arif, and thank you, Nnamdi, for setting that context. So I currently lead the creative team at the Enterprise Development Center of the Pan Atlantic University. And it's actually been a very interesting journey. And I think if I had a phrase to sort of sum up the work we've done, the journey, the interactions with entrepreneurs in the creative space, it would be that talent is not enough. So it's good to have talent, but there's so much more that needs to go into turning that talent into something sustainable, something that generates revenue. What we've done in the last couple of years has been trying to work with entrepreneurs in the creative space from three or four perspectives. The very first one being from a capacity building perspective. So quite a number of them are not able to fully maximize the potentials and the opportunities that they see because they just have raw talent. And it's actually very interesting. We're currently doing a project with the MasterCard Foundation in Nigeria, where we're trying to generate employment for 40,000 entrepreneurs every year for 5 years. And we're looking at only 2 tracks, agro-allied and creative. And under creative, we've been focusing on entrepreneurs in film, in fashion, photography, leather, arts and craft. And it's still the same issues that we've seen prior to starting this project last year. So one is capacity building. The second thing that we've seen is capital. So when we say capital, the right type of funding that they need to set up. So, you know, a lot of them have access to short-term funding, whereas they need long-term funding. So that sort of ends up strangulating their rise. And I think something that we've seen and we'd like to see more emphasis is the development of clusters, the development of hubs, because they cannot do it alone. So we have 1 or 2, but still very, very narrow. So if we're going to get government to have some sort of involvement or private sector players that are looking at, that would be one space that we'd like to encourage people to come in, to set up clusters. So there's so much more that goes into getting a Burna Boy to win an award, to be an international sensation. There's so many things, and I think that's part of what Nnamdi talked about when he was setting the context. So the services that are there, we are seeing a dearth of talent in that space. And then lastly, the ability for them to try and identify their customers. So I would call it the 4 C's, the capacity building, the right type of capital, customers, and then clusters. And I think, looking at it from Nigeria, but I think that would be the same thing across maybe a few of the Commonwealth countries. But so those are some of the areas that we've come in working with the creative industries, the entrepreneurs in creative, and it's been actually very encouraging. And one thing that we're advocating for is to bring back the mentorship or apprenticeship scheme. So yes, you do have it, but working with somebody that has been there before, done that for such a long time, there's so much you can pick up from them.
So can I just, so thank you very much, Nneka. I mean, really helpful comments that you've been making. And I think you highlighted the importance of job creation as well. And can I really pick up the comments that all of you have been making and ask you this question? If you imagine this scenario, that a meeting of Commonwealth culture ministers meet. Now, of course, that's the first dilemma, because as we know, different countries, they sit in different places. There's no uniform, it's not like finance where there's a finance minister. And in the UK, it's, different. But essentially, you can imagine a situation where you've got 54 countries and they've got their key person who's got budgetary responsibility for the creative industries within their country. They've all come together in one room at the same time for the first time. What would you be saying to them in relation to things that they should be thinking about doing and things that they should, because I think when you talk about Nneka clusters, what came into my mind was not clusters in Nigeria, but clusters in the Commonwealth on film, clusters in the Commonwealth on fashion, clusters in the Commonwealth on literature, on video gaming, etc., 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 music. They don't exist. We don't have any of these Commonwealth creative clusters. But actually, if you think about what I was saying earlier and what you've all touched upon, the vitality of the Commonwealth community, the young population, a lot of them are high growth economies. In fact, the economies outside of Europe are growing faster than the economies in Europe, even with COVID there as well. So I think that's my question to you. What would you be saying? What would you be asking those ministers to be addressing? Let's go to Nicolette first, and then
I can maybe
Right,
also
Rasmus,
jump in
yeah.
here just,
Sure, please, yeah.
with one thing here. First, I want to say to Nneka that you may know that you had a startup from your program in 2019, Choma Opudimka with Red Button. You know her very well. She actually yesterday participated in Bright, giving advice on how to pitch for investors. And also, just earlier today, we heard Lightning Arts, your contestant from this year, to pitch in the semifinals. And tomorrow we will know whether they will also pitch in the finals. So tomorrow at 4 o'clock Central European summertime, you will see maybe another Nigerian startup work its way to the finals. And so to come to your question, Arif, one thing is all the bottom-up work that is done by, for example, Nicolette and by the Enterprise Development Center in Nigeria in helping the startups on the ground. And for your question on, the cultural ministers, but it's actually, as we know, it's the ministers of culture and enterprise and foreign affairs, because there are lots of areas where the creative industries can help to develop jobs and to create innovation. And this top-down, let's look at what can the ministers do. It's more than support, it's also the right framework conditions. It's not putting up barriers. For example, in China, you're not allowed to show foreign cartoons in a certain time frame. Of course, where the kids want to watch cartoons, but they should watch, also some non-Chinese cartoons maybe. So it's a lot about other stuff than simply send more money. But it's also, of course, about money, but it's maybe fostering the right ecosystem. So I would just like to hear from our three participants, but maybe taking the perspective a bit away from sending more money for culture to what are some of the big structural things that can be done?
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. I mean, the policies, the framework, the enabling environment, if you like. Nicolette, do you want to?
And maybe I can here at the very end say, we also have a program actually called the Creative Industries Policy seminar where policymakers, ministers, etc., both lecture and participate to figure out what to do.
Great.
But Nicolette, maybe you were asked a long time ago about what do you think could be done?
I think that one of the key things that needs to happen is that people need to stop categorizing culture as something that is part of the past and something that's actually part of the present and is something that should be part of the future. And the reason why I say this is because, whenever people talk about their culture, it's more something that, we look back on and say, oh, we've been doing this for a very long time. There isn't a lot of emphasis on, okay, what will we be doing in the future? And I think when it comes to Commonwealth, I think that a lot of emphasis needs to actually be put into exporting culture. One of the things that's often happened with our competition with the Creative Business Cup is most of our winners have been people that are, making products using indigenous plants. And so it's been a lot of food, and every time, because I stay out of the judging process, every time I ask the judges, I'm like, oh my gosh, are you going to do food again? Are you going to do this again? They're like, no, we want to take our culture out there. We want to choose a startup that, when they go to Denmark, when they compete, then it's going to be like, this was made in Botswana, because they're cognizant of the fact that, other countries might come with huge tech stuff, and then they'll be like, well, how are we going to compete with that? So then there has been that emphasis on actually exporting culture. Now, the great thing about Botswana is that there actually is a ministry for that. It is kind of grouped together. It's a ministry of youth, sports, and culture. So it's all in one building. And I think that, one of the things that they have been doing is they have been trying to create incubators and spaces for entrepreneurs who are in the crafts to actually be assisted, but not so much when it comes to, things like music. So I think we should look at exporting our culture and trading in cultural experiences from a Commonwealth perspective. Sometimes, the embassies here do join in. They do sometimes do movies from particular cultures, and then they rent out a theater, and then anyone can go and watch, for free. So I think more things like that will definitely open up the cultural and creative space a lot more.
Okay, thanks very much. Nneka?
I think for me, what I would like to see if I had all the ministers would be more of a deliberate and intentional connecting of the dots.
Yeah.
And just like Rasmus spoke earlier, why have them? I need to have them, speaking more with their foreign affairs commissioners in their respective countries, such that they're changing the narrative, and deliberately, intentionally, they're actually designing things for the respective. So all the Nigerian embassies everywhere, our arts, our culture should be displayed there. That's the first thing. Of course, we can't overemphasize the need to have an enabling environment. So definitely that's something that we need to do. So in my country, as an example, Nigeria, we'll be looking at things around stronger intellectual property laws, looking at piracy, things like that. And then, also the ability to protect the investments, the foreign direct investments that come into that space. So yeah, so those things need to be done. But I think if I had those ministers of arts and culture and tourism, I would tell them not to be there alone. They need to be there with their foreign ministers as well, so that they're speaking, saying the same thing.
I mean, we certainly see this, very, very good point. And we certainly see this in the Commonwealth Business Women's Network. One of the things that we always say to the gender ministers is don't just speak to your own ministry, because gender is cross-cutting. And often what you find is, the gender ministries in the Commonwealth, from what we see, are usually the ones that are the most under-resourced, the most, I mean, they're just all the things that they couldn't or shouldn't be, really. They should be the strongest, but they're sometimes the weakest. The people running them, sometimes there's nepotism involved, etc. So that importance of working across government, really important, and a kind of a whole system approach. And something that the Commonwealth Fashion Council does some amazing work. And if you've not come across them, you should Google Commonwealth Fashion Council, and they do some great work. But they have really brought home to me the understanding, and also the things that I've done in the fashion space to some extent, although I'm wearing my nice tie today, is the importance of thinking of it as a horizontal rather than a vertical, and so fashion, for everything from the film industry to design, it obviously comes into all of those areas. Nnamdi, you and I have also spoken a little bit about the D word. And Rasmus, what's the D word? It's not Denmark. It's not Denmark.
No, I was just coming to that, Arif.
Yeah, no, it's the diaspora word, but there you go, Nnamdi.
But let me contextualize that diaspora. You remember when I talked about my the spark for that book on creative industries in Africa came about in Ghana. I was there. I spent a full month in January 2020. A year prior, there was something known as the Year of Return. Who's returning? The diaspora. The CEO of Ghana Tourism Authority came up with going beyond the year of the return. So it's not just year of return 2019, but strategy to go beyond. And he had a 7-point agenda. I can't remember them from the top of my head at the moment, but 7-point agenda, which has to be purposeful. I just Googled the gentleman's name. I think his name is Kwesi Agyeman. And if going back to your question in terms of what would you tell those ministers, I would tell them to look up for the CEO of Ghana Tourism Authority, Kwesi Agyeman. If you just Google that, less than a day ago, he was talking about 80% of hotels not having websites. So we're looking at some of those sort of conversations. Now, it's got to be purposeful, it's got to be strategic, and more importantly, you don't leave it to government. These things are driven by an organized private sector. And just one final word for Nneka. I think I featured your Center for Nollywood Studies within the one of the departments in Pan Atlantic University. That's something that's quite interesting. Universities also need to play a role. Another case study I have is Javed Art Center at University of Pretoria. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria loves arts, and it's good that an appreciation of arts at that level can actually inform policy making on a broader scale.
So, I mean, I think we've got about 5 minutes to go, I think, I think something like that. So what I would say, let's just check whether there are any questions that have come in on the chat, or anybody in the audience wants to pose anything.
Yes, so actually there is one question for Dr. Nnamdi about your books. Where can the audience find your books? Is it possible to find them somewhere and read them for free?
So we will post after this session in our community the name of the book of Dr. Nnamdi, because people have been asking for the title, the full title, link, etc. So we'll do that right after. We have about 4 minutes left, and what we'll also post in the community is the link to the policy seminar that we are running frequently on what can lawmakers, policymakers do in the creative space.
Yeah, and also there was the report that Nnamdi and I wrote last year, the working paper, Bloomberg's working paper. We'll put that there as well. So just in the 4 minutes that we've got remaining, let me just go around to each of you to say that, and this is the kind of, Nicolette, it's the interview question, what does success look like? So what does success look like to you? I've got, my daughter today is 10, okay? She's 10 years old today. Anissa, happy birthday, Anissa. And Daddy always mentions her, that's what fathers do. But what does the world look like for her? So when Anissa hits 20, 10 years from now, what would you be saying to Anissa in terms of Commonwealth and creative industries? So she thinks about these things in a more, what does success look like so address your remarks to a girl of 10 today in the Commonwealth, and how can we make the Commonwealth creative industries more visible, more vibrant, and more meaningful? Nicolette, let's go to you first.
Thank you. To a girl of 10, I would say, if you love making things, if you love creating things, hold on to that. A lot of people are going to try to tell you that you need to focus on more sensible things when you grow up in terms of a career. If you have art in your heart, if you're something creative, hold on to that. And we are going to be working on building a world in which, if you're a creative and you're an artist, then you will not have to suffer a lot of turmoil and anxiety just because you have chosen to pursue your art.
Great piece. I shall play that, Nicolette, to Anissa later, and she will take that to heart. Nneka, over to you. What would your message be to a 10-year-old in the Commonwealth, a girl?
To a 10-year-old in Commonwealth, I think I would say, no matter what talents you have, and if you're creative, it's not enough, but it's the beginning of building something sustainable, something bigger than you that can be exported to any Commonwealth country. But you cannot do it alone. And you might fail, it's fine, fail forward, get up and continue going.
Great advice, great, Nneka. That's another piece that I'll definitely share with Anissa. Nnamdi, what would you be saying?
I just reminded my dad over the weekend, bless him, he's about 90, how he pushed me to study medicine rather than following my heart's desire, which was arts. When I was round about Anissa's age. And I just also recalled that my daughter, who is about the same age as Anissa, she turns 11 in August, actually does picnics for me. When I get all those photos and WhatsApp stuff, she actually does those for me. She wins an award in content writing, and I encourage her. It's not about studying medicine and being a scientist or whatever. Follow your dreams, follow your crafts. Yeah. It works.
Yeah, well, that's a great note to end on. Rasmus, over to you. There you are.
I would say to her that she should listen to the BBC, because the BBC will tell her that most jobs in the traditional sectors will be taken over by AI and robots, except for in the creative industries. So if she wants to have a job in 10 years from now, she can. I heard that on BBC. It's actually true. Also, if she's interested in something that will both spark her, both curiosity. It would be something that could give her meaning, understanding of other cultures and where she is in the world. Then definitely go for the culture and creative industries. Yeah. That's where she can find that.
Yeah, And I think the other, I would just add to that by saying that when these ministers 4 years ago, they all adopted a proposal put together by Obama, one of the last things the Obama Biden administration did on STEM to STEAM. So let's really drive forward on that STEAM-based approach beyond STEM to make sure the arts, innovation, and design is very much part of all of those conversations. So I'd like to say thank you all very much. We're at time. Thank you, Nicolette. Thank you, Nneka. Thank you, Nnamdi, for joining us today at Bright 2021, virtually or in person, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of other sessions to keep you stimulated over the next few hours and this week. But from me, Arif, Zaman, Commonwealth Businessmen's Network, and from the Commonwealth family, back to Rasmus and Ghana.
Thank you. Thank you, Arif.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.